Nobody expected it to go like this. Not the fans, not the pundits, and certainly not Thomas Tuchel, the newly appointed interim manager of England's national team. It was supposed to be a routine win, a footnote in a qualifying campaign, a quiet evening in the Pyrenees. Instead, it became a national talking point. Estadi Nacional, nestled in the hills of Andorra la Vella, hosted fewer than 8,000 people that night. But as the floodlights flickered on, something strange unfolded. England, heavy favorites, couldn't score, couldn't pass, couldn't even settle. This wasn't just a poor performance, it was a fracture in identity. And when the final whistle blew, after a nervy 83rd minute goal that barely crossed the line, the scoreboard read 1-0. But the damage was done. The real explosion came minutes later. Not on the pitch, but on live television, England had entered the match with quiet confidence. Tuchel, known for his tactical precision, made bold changes. He left senior names on the bench, trusting in youth, energy, and versatility in possession. But the team looked anything but composed. The synthetic pitch, the narrow dimensions, and Andorra's compact 5-4-1 formation turned the game into a trench war. Saka and Foden found no space. Jude Bellingham misfired. Even Harry Kane, subbed in late, looked stranded. Every misplaced pass was met with jeers. Not from the home crowd, but from frustrated England supporters who had traveled across Europe, expecting a spectacle. What they got felt like a warning siren. By halftime, England hadn't registered a shot on target. Back in ITV's London studio, the tension was already simmering. Karen Carney had her notes ready. Roy Keane was visibly seething, and patched in via remote link from the team tunnel in Andorra was Tuchel himself, still in his track jacket, visibly tight-lipped. As the highlights played, Mark Pugac cleared his throat. Karen, I'll start with you. What are we watching here? It's chaos, Mark. England looked lost. No tempo, no width, and no emotional response. It's as if they underestimated the challenge and now they're stuck. Then Pugac turned to Roy Keane. Keane leaned forward, voice low, sharp as a knife. This isn't a bad game. This is a disgrace. A silence. Carney didn't even blink. You're telling me you've got Premier League players who can't string 3 passes together? Against part-timers? We're watching a team with no hunger, no shame? That badge is supposed to mean something. Tuchel cut in, voice even but firm. Roy, with respect, you're simplifying. This isn't about hunger. It's about cohesion, about adapting to conditions. These players haven't trained more than 72 hours together. It's a new system, Keane snapped. Oh, give me a break. You're managing England, not experimenting with tactics on a rainy Wednesday. If these lads need a manual to beat Andorra, we're finished. And just like that, the debate went nuclear. Social media lit up. Whether Keane was right and Tuchel under fire started trending. The game was over. But the real story had just begun. The confrontation in the ITV studio didn't cool off after the break. It escalated. As the second half of the match resumed in the background, the broadcast returned to Tuchel, Keane, and Carney now visibly caught in a brewing storm of analysis, frustration, and very public disagreement. Keane didn't waste a moment. Thomas, I played for managers who didn't care about comfort. You think Sir Alex Ferguson ever said, let's be patient with Andorra? He would have lost it if we played like this. I don't care how new your system is. Tuchel took a breath and leaned forward toward the camera. I respect that history, Roy, but this isn't 1999. This is modern international football. Players have data, roles, principles. You can't just run harder and expect goals. Keane gave a short laugh, not amused but incredulous. This is England, not a university project. We're here to win, not test out philosophies. Carney finally stepped in, trying to bridge the widening gap. Maybe it's both. There's a generational difference here. Roy wants immediacy, identity, dominance. Thomas is building structure, but right now, the result isn't convincing anyone. Tuchel, unshaken, continued, "You can talk identity all day, but systems create identity. I'm trying to implement a tactical framework, not a motivational speech." The debate mirrored what was now happening on the pitch. England had finally scored, but the goal, a scrambled finish from a corner, barely pushed across the line by Jude Bellingham, was far from inspiring. The camera cut briefly to a subdued Tuchel on the sideline, not celebrating but scribbling in his notebook. Back in the studio, Keane pointed at the screen. "There. That goal sums it up. Chaos, no plan. Just luck." Tuchel shook his head. "No, that's resilience. When structure breaks down, resilience finishes the job. That's something I admire about English football." The back and forth captivated viewers. On social media, clips of the broadcast began to go viral. Football Twitter exploded with side-by-side memes. Tuchel's stoicism versus Keane's fury. TikToks layered Keane's rants over dramatic music. Fans divided into camps, the Roy Truthers versus the Trust Tuchel Brigade. In pubs across the UK, the debate spilled into real conversations. Was this the beginning of England's tactical evolution, or the exposure of its soft underbelly? Meanwhile, in the post-match press conference, Tuchel doubled down. Calm, firm, and unshaken, he said, "We came here, we won, and we learned. That's what matters." But for Roy Keane and a growing number of critics, winning without conviction was no win at all. The headlines hit before the team bus had even left the stadium parking lot. Keane erupts on live TV. Tuchel defends the indefensible. England win sparks national argument. Back in London, newspaper editors scrambled to lock in their front pages. Online outlets pushed breaking news alerts. Comment sections overflowed. Everyone had something to say. But behind the noise, within the walls of the England dressing room, the atmosphere was far more subdued. Players sat with their heads down, shirts half peeled, boots still on, no celebration, just silence, broken only by the soft buzz of mobile phones lighting up with alerts and criticism. Jude Bellingham scrolled through Twitter. "Tuchel getting cooked RN," read one trending comment. Another showed Keane's face edited onto a flamethrower. Across the room, Harry Kane broke the silence. "We got the win," he muttered. "We move on." But even Kane didn't believe it. He knew the tone. This wasn't a grinded-out victory. It was a red flag. Meanwhile, FA executives were on their phones. They had brought Tuchel in to bring fresh energy, new methods, a post-Southgate identity. But tonight's result, and more importantly the fallout, had shaken their confidence. He was still early in his tenure, yes, but English football was never a patient ecosystem. In the ITV control room, producers replayed clips of the Keane-Tuchel, spat over and over. One segment, Keane saying it's not a university project, was already being clipped into a viral short. Viewership numbers for the post-match show had tripled during the argument. Over at Sky Sports, pundits joined the chorus. Jamie Carragher tweeted, "Tuchel's excuse train has no brakes." Micah Richards added, "Keane said what everyone's thinking." But perhaps the most stinging criticism came from within. A former England captain, speaking anonymously to The Times, said, "This isn't about tactics. It's about presence. That team looked leaderless. Southgate had his faults, but you never doubted who was in charge. Tonight, nobody commanded anything." By morning, polls began circulating on social media. Should Tuchel stay on as England manager? Is Roy Keane right about England's mentality? Thousands voted. The results were stark. Over 60% sided with Keane. At St. George's Park the next day, Tuchel walked into a press briefing hall filled with skeptical eyes. A reporter from the BBC didn't wait long. "Thomas, was last night a step forward or backward?" Tuchel exhaled. "Progress doesn't always look pretty. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it invites criticism, but it's still progress. His tone was steady. But even the best speakers know when the room doesn't believe them. By the following Monday, the storm had shifted indoors. Behind closed doors at St. George's Park, a scheduled team meeting took on a heavier tone. Tuchel entered the briefing room with a folder full of match analytics, heat maps, and individual performance metrics. But it wasn't the numbers that weighed on the room. It was the silence. Most players sat with their arms folded. Some avoided eye contact. The usual locker room energy was gone, replaced by an unspoken sense of unease. Tuchel opened with a simple sentence. "We're going to talk honestly today." He clicked through the first slide, a tactical breakdown of Andorra's low block. He explained how England's wide overloads had failed, how the midfield triangles collapsed under pressure, and how positional discipline had broken down in transition. No one interrupted, no one questioned him. But midway through the session, Jordan Henderson raised a hand. "With all due respect, Coach, none of this explains the mood. We're not here to talk about triangles. We're talking about identity. That's what we lost out there." Tuchel paused, nodded, and then sat down, abandoning the clicker. "You're right," he admitted. "We lost more than tempo. We lost belief." In that moment, something shifted. The meeting evolved into a real conversation, not about formations, but expectations, leadership, and legacy. Some players defended Tuchel's methods. Others voiced confusion. One senior squad member bluntly asked, "What's our purpose when we wear this shirt?" Outside that room, the FA board convened its own emergency session. Pressure from media partners, public backlash, and player unrest had forced their hand. A debate unfolded: back Tuchel publicly or begin searching for alternatives. One senior official warned, "If we throw him under the bus now, we'll prove Keane right, that we stand for nothing." But another countered, "We brought him in for boldness, not excuses." By that evening, tabloids had already caught a wind of internal fractures. "England camp frustration grows," read the Telegraph's banner. Meanwhile, an ex-national team psychologist appeared on BBC Radio 5 stating, "This isn't tactical paralysis, it's cultural dislocation. England doesn't know who it wants to be anymore." Back at Tuchel's hotel, he watched the segment, alone. His phone buzzed with texts, some from former colleagues offering support, others suggesting he step down before being pushed. He ignored them. Instead, he pulled out a notebook and wrote a single phrase across the top of the page. "Silence is not surrender." Whatever happened next, Thomas Tuchel wasn't done yet. The final straw wasn't tactical. It was tonal. 3 days after the match, Tuchel sat down for a live interview on BBC's flagship football program, Inside the Game. The intent was damage control. The result was something else entirely. Clips of the interview would later be dissected like a political debate. Analysts broke down his posture, his phrasing, even the pauses between sentences. When asked if he had the dressing room's full support, Tuchel paused. "I believe I do, but belief isn't the same as certainty." That hesitation became a headline. So did his follow-up. "Maybe I haven't earned their trust yet. That takes time, and I accept that." Across the country, the reaction was immediate. Some praised his humility, others called it weakness. But in the corridors of the Football Association, it was interpreted as instability. That evening, the FA's executive committee voted, not to fire him, not yet, but to initiate an internal review of the coaching setup, a bureaucratic term for brace for impact. Meanwhile, Roy Keane, still trending days after the broadcast, released a short podcast episode titled, "What Winning Actually Means." "You can't fix a football team with philosophy alone," he said. "You fix it with standards. You fix it with courage. And you sure as hell don't whisper your way through a crisis." The message landed. At the next England training session, the cameras were allowed in for 5 minutes. Tuchel, once so animated on the training ground, was quieter, more reserved. Players followed instructions, but the spark was missing. Reporters described the mood as controlled tension. But then, something changed. 2 days before England's next match, Tuchel made an unannounced move. No media, no speeches, no cameras. He called in 5 senior players, Henderson, Kane, Stones, Bellingham, and Walker, and sat them down in a circle. "This is your team," he told them. "I'll guide it, but you lead it." He handed each a blank card. "Write one word. You want this squad to represent. Just one." He collected them without reading aloud, then stood. "Whatever happens next, we go out on our terms." That night, Tuchel didn't sleep. Not out of fear, but because, for the first time since Andorra, he had clarity. In the end, England's biggest crisis wasn't about a scoreline or a studio argument. It was about identity and the quiet, painful work of rebuilding it.